Hi, Homework 8, question 5. Now in this question here, what I have to do is I have to solve 2 sine x plus 1 equals 0 for the given range up above. For the range up above, I can note from there, I see that the range is from 0 through to 2 pi included, and that tells me that that's going to be an answer that I have to give in radians. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work it through two ways. I'm going to work it through in radians, first of all, which is my preferred method. And what I'll do is I'll show you also how to work it through in degrees, if that's the way that you've done that. Okay, first of all, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try to get the sine x on its own. Right, to do that, what I'll do is I will first sine x, take the 1 over to the other side of the equals, becomes a minus 1. And then what I'm left with is sine x is equal to minus a half. So when I get to that stage there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at this sign here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and ask myself, is that positive or is it negative? Okay, I can see it's negative. Okay, so what I'm going to do there is I'm going to look at a cast table. So that will sine tan cos. And I'm going to identify which parts of the cast table this would lie in. So sine is positive in the A and the S, they're all in the sine quadrants, and it's negative in the tan and the cosine quadrants. So that's this one here and that there. So that's where I'm looking for my solutions. If I can show you what we're actually doing in a graphical method. So what I have here is I have a graph of y equals sine x. And if I look at this here, what I can do is I can see that I've got up to there is 90 degrees. That there is my quadrant 1 on the cast table. Okay, so all are positive in that quadrant. This quadrant here gives me the sine quadrant, which is the second quadrant, where the sine is positive. And if I look down here, this one here at 270 degrees, that's my third quadrant. And finally, my fourth quadrant taking me back to 360 degrees, or in radians, 2 pi. What the question is asking me to do is actually to look at the value that I would find sine x is equal to minus a half. So if I look where minus a half is, I'm really interested in where does that line there cut the curve. So it cuts the curve there. So for an x value, I'm looking for one value to come out there and the other value to come out here. So I'm looking for two answers that are going to come out of this question here. Okay, that's it explained basically from a graphical point of view. Right then, so once I get to this point here, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for two solutions, okay? One in the third quadrant, one in the fourth quadrant. What I always do is I work out what the acute angle is. So the acute angle. Sometimes that's part of my solution, sometimes it's not. In this case, it's not a solution. So what I have in here is sine x is equal to a half. And yes, I have dropped the negative sign. Okay? What I'm going to then do, just because I'm trying to find the acute angle, I'm going to look at my table of exact values. And on my table of exact values, what I'm interested in doing is finding where sine x is equal to a half. And what I can see is that the solution that I'm going to look for in this one is going to be pi upon 6. Or, if we're thinking in degrees, that's going to be 30 degrees. Okay, so what I said there, it was going to be pi upon 6 is my acute angle, or on the other hand, I said it was going to be 30 degrees if I was working in degrees. Right, so from here I'm going to work out my quadrant 3 solution. Okay, and in quadrant 3 in here, to work out my x value, I'm going to start with pi. I nearly wrote 180 there. Start with pi, and what I'll do is I'm going to add on pi upon 6. So what I have here is if I look back up at the cast table, what I have is that is equal to 0, that's 0. If I rotate round, that's 90, round to here, that's pi, or 180, and all the way back round, and this is going to be 2 pi that's going to be here as well. And it's only the horizontal line that I'm going to use to work out my angles that are going to be in the other quadrants. In the third quadrant, it's always pi plus the angle. So if I look at trying to do this work, if I think about it in fractions, pi would just be the exact same as 6 over 6 pi. So if I gather that together, that should give me an answer of 7 pi upon 6, and that's going to be one of my solutions. If I work out my quadrant 4 solution, so in quadrant 4 in here, my x value is going to be equal to, and it's going to be 2 pi, and I'm going to subtract pi upon 6 from that. That was the acute angle that I worked out. And just remember that 2 pi would be the exact same as an equivalent fraction of 12 upon 6. So 12 upon 6 minus pi upon 6, or 12 pi upon 6 minus pi upon 6, will give me 11 pi upon 6. And from there, I'll write down my solution. So x is equal to 7 pi upon 6 and 11 pi upon 6, and that there is in radians. Okay, and that's my question finished if I'm doing it in radian measure. If I was doing it in degrees, I would then, from my x is equal to 30, I would work out my quadrant 3. And my quadrant 3 angle would be, instead of pi, I would use 180 degrees. 180 plus 30 giving me 210 degrees. My quad 4 will be 360 instead of 2 pi, so 360 minus 30, which gives me 330 degrees. Okay. So from there, my solution is going to be x is equal to, and we say that's 210 and 330. Now, in this question, because the range is in radians, I must convert the answers into radians. And the way that I can do that is by multiplying degrees by pi over 180. To work this through, what I'll do is I'll divide the top and the bottom. Okay, I can divide the top and bottom by 30, and I'll get 6 on the bottom. 30 into this will give me 7, and that gives me my 7 pi upon 6 radians. And finally, with this one here, I'll do the same, times by pi over 180. Divide throughout by 30, that should give me 6 on the bottom. Divide by 30, giving me 11 on the top there. That gives me 11 pi upon 6 radians. Okay, so that's how we're changing the radians, the degrees into radians. Right, let me show you how this is going to be marked. So I'll show you a marking scheme for doing it down using the radians. So what I would do is I would get 1 mark here for sorting that out to that point. I'm then just going to give 1 mark for getting the 7 pi upon 6, the third quadrant answer, and the other mark there for 11 pi upon 6, and in radians. If I look down the other way of doing it, if you're doing it in degrees, I'll give 1 mark here, I'll give another mark for getting the answers. So I'll go for the solutions here, getting the both of them in degrees, and finally the third mark would be for converting into radians. So this question here, out of 3 marks.